Chapter 5. The Midpoint Truth. They kept moving because standing still felt like surrender. Between the erasing seams in the masonry and the clocks that all read the same impossible time, Ava and Eli had fallen into a rhythm of searching, checking windows, peering into cars frozen like sculptures, calling softly to anyone whose face had not yet turned into a mask. Their steps were careful, their conversations clipped, as if every word might be remembered forever in this paused world. They had sheltered for a while in an old municipal library, stacks of books forming a maze that felt somehow safe from the unmaking light. The lamps were frozen above reading tables. A page hung stiffly in mid-turn as if a reader had been caught mid-breath. Ava had sat at one of the tables and opened a book she hadn't meant to read, simply because the action of turning a page made the world feel marginally more like it used to. Eli wandered among the stacks, fingers trailing along spines as if the touch might coax some answer out of the paper and glue. He moved with a quiet intensity, scanning and cataloging, more soldier than scientist but deliberate in his search. When he returned to the table, he carried a thin file he had found behind a reference shelf, an institutional folder marked with medical and incident codes. His face was ashen. "What is it?" Ava asked, closing the book. He didn't answer immediately. He set the file down very carefully, like it was a living thing that could startle. When he finally opened it, his hands shook, but not from cold. The tremor had a different origin, the kind that comes before a man realizes his footing has been pulled from beneath him. There were reports, terse and efficient, compiled in the emergency department after an extraction. There was a chain of custody, a manifest of names. There was a timestamp. There were descriptions of wounds and a brief narrative of an operation gone wrong. A map of coordinates, photographs. And then, a single line that tasted like a knife to Ava's ribs when Eli read it aloud. Subject deceased on scene. Pronouncement, 1 minute and 13 seconds, he said. He looked up at her, voice flat, searching for a reaction that would tell him he'd misread a column. Ava's head felt light with the force of denial she almost welcomed. Her first instinct was to reach for the obvious explanation. Misfiled records. Mislabeled photograph. Different Eli. 2 universes' paperwork overlapped. Error was probable. "This has to be," she started. "It's from some other log. Maybe a parallel archive. Maybe they mislabeled the file. There's no way." Eli's face had changed. It tightened in a way Ava had seen on training grounds and in combat briefings. A man rearranging himself internally to hold a truth he didn't want. His hands closed on the paper until his knuckles were white. "I don't remember this," he said, voice ragged. "I don't remember being in this condition. I don't remember dying." The word hung between them, dying. A small, clinical verb on paper, a tidal wave in air. Ava wanted to reach for him then, on impulse to steady him, but something in her pushed back. She wanted to protect herself from another loss. Her history had taught her that reaching was a risk. "Then it's not true," she insisted instead, more for herself than for him. "It's from somewhere else. From the other whatever this is. Or here. You're." She let the sentence dangle, the reality of his presence a fragile anchor. Eli's laugh was a naked little thing, raw and unbelieving. "Being here doesn't refute a report that says I died. How do we reconcile that? How do you reconcile being present and a file saying otherwise?" Ava swallowed hard. "Because files belong to worlds. Worlds overlap. They don't make you less real. She wanted it to be an argument in logic, in semantics. She wanted to dismantle the paper with words. He studied the photograph tucked into the folder again. It was the same face, same jawline, the same scar along the cheek. The lighting was different. There were devices attached that neither of them recognized. Whoever had taken that picture had meant it to be official. Somebody had marked him dead. Eli turned the photograph over like it might cough up another truth. "If that's me," he said slowly, "then what is this? How can I be both here and—" He stopped. He watched his hands as if they were foreign, unsure who they belonged to. Ava reached across the table and put her hand on the file, feeling the paper's grain beneath her gloved palm. The gesture surprised her by its simplicity. There were other ways to connect, holding hands, touching shoulders, but sliding her palm over institutional paper felt like a pledge. She would not be alone in whatever came. "You're not a file," she said. She wanted the words to be sufficient. They were not, but they steadied something small in Eli's eyes. For the first time since the sky tore, the hollow of fear in Ava's chest rearranged itself into a new shape, something like dread but threaded with a fierce, immediate tenderness. She realized with a rush that she was afraid of losing him. It was absurd. He had been with her for hours. They had found each other amid a city suspended between a single heartbeat and collapse. But the fact on a sterile page had altered the geometry of her feelings. The possibility of his erasure pressed on her throat like a hand. Eli's attention drifted from the paper to her face. There was curiosity and an ache that mirrored her own. "Do you remember anything about losing someone? You've been quiet," he said. She closed her eyes against him. Why did he want her history unshielded? Why did she even consider telling him? Perhaps because he had just been confronted by his own mortality as recorded in someone else's ledger, and silence suddenly felt like cruelty. When she spoke, the words came out brittle and small. "There was a boy once," she said. "An ambulance call on a summer night. He didn't make it. I told his mom I'd bring him back. Promised. I failed." Eli listened without flinching. When she finished, she realized she had told him more than she intended. The confession left a raw, honest burn that was almost purifying. "That's why you can't leave the frozen," Eli said softly. "That's why you touch them. Because you owe them the dignity of being remembered." Ava pressed her lips together and let out a breath that sounded like conceding. "Maybe," she said. "Maybe I'm trying to buy back a promise I made that night. Maybe I think if I do enough, I can fix it." Eli reached across the table then and took her hand. It was a light, unexpected contact that felt like an agreement without language. "You can't fix everything," he said. "But you can choose what to do now." Warmth threaded into Ava's fingers at his touch. It was imbued with a soldierly steadiness, like the way a hand on the small of your back tells you you'll be supported if you fall. She surprised herself by leaning into the contact, a tiny surrender in a world that otherwise offered none. Time, or whatever pretended to be time here, seemed to hum at them as if in reply. Eli's breaths were regular, even, as if the report had not carved into him the way it had in her. After a long moment, he looked back at the file as though daring it to mean more than it said. "Even if that file is true in some other ledger," he said, choosing his words slowly, "I am here. I know how this feels. And I know I'm not what they wrote." "But you could be," Ava whispered. The edge of panic sharpened her voice. What if being here is a holding place? What if it's just the last second of something else and if it is, Eli interrupted, voice steady, we make the most of it. We figure it out. Together. There was a bravery in the simplicity of his answer that made something in her unclench. They had been practical since the first second. Counting, mapping, making shelter. This was different. This was choosing a promise in a world that had stopped promising anything. They left the library with the file carefully folded and stowed in Eli's jacket. It was an anchor and an incitement both. A truth that complicated them and a challenge to go on. They moved slower now, more deliberate, their closeness an unspoken contract. The city's gaps and erasures became more menacing with every block. Little seams of white light licked at the bases of buildings and then receded as if tasting the air. As they walked, Eli stayed close. Ava found herself narrating small, useless details. How the street smelled of rain and old diesel, the way the moonlight bled across a stop sign. She felt the need to fill the silence, to make as many memory threads as possible, as if the act of remembering could teach the universe to keep them. Ava laughed once, a shaky sound. Eli's answer was a quiet, genuine smile, the kind that arrived at the corners of his mouth and made his eyes softer. They reached an abandoned intersection where traffic lights dangled like relics. The world held its breath. Then the asphalt heaved, almost imperceptibly at first. It felt like the floor of a stomach settling. A hairline fracture snaked outward from beneath their boots, a thin fissure that gleamed like glass. Ava felt the ground under her feet hum, a low resonance that made her bones tighten. She looked at Eli and saw the same shock, fear sharpened into sudden crystalline focus. The hairline widened. Light spilled from the crack, not the warm gold of street lamps but a brittle white-blue streak that ran along the asphalt like a vein of something electrified. It's starting, Eli breathed. Ava's mouth tasted of iron. She realized with a physical clarity that this second, this fragile, impossible wedge in time, was not stable. The lines of light were not just cracks but the first sign of the seam giving way. They stood there, hands nearly brushing, as the road beneath them fractured into strips of luminosity. The single second they inhabited was unraveling, an impossible truth that demanded a choice they had not been prepared to make. Around them the frozen city remained still, until the light began to spread, slow and inevitable, announcing the end of this held breath. In the hush, with a crack widening like a mouth about to speak, Ava felt her chest cleave open with a reckless clarity. It was almost unbearably close now, the decision that would define them both. Chapter 6. The 1-second world. The crack in the pavement slowly sealed itself again, as if the world had exhaled, taken back its warning, and retreated into silence. But the aftershock of that light stayed inside Ava's chest, vibrating beneath her ribs like a sound she could still hear even after it stopped. Something was unraveling. Something was trying to end. And now, for the first time, Ava felt the terror of what that ending might mean. Eli caught her elbow gently. "Hey, you with me?" She nodded, but the truth was less certain. Her heartbeat felt displaced, half a second ahead or behind where it should be, as though her body knew something her mind refused to understand. They stood in the mute street for several breaths, waiting for reality to pulse again. When nothing did, Eli spoke. "We need to find more data. Something to explain this second." Ava seized the word. Second. 1 second. The idea clung to her like a burr. They walked toward a row of office buildings whose facades mirrored the frozen chaos around them. Their steps echoed in the quiet world, soft thuds on concrete that somehow felt too loud, too alive. Inside the first building, a telecommunications hub, screens flickered with static images. Most froze on the moment the second was stolen, 1 second lighting every monitor like a curse. The displays glowed unnaturally bright, humming with electricity that shouldn't still be flowing. Eli touched one cautiously. The screen twitched like it was trying to animate a scene trapped just behind the glass. Ava found a data terminal. Papers scattered across the desk, printouts of seismic readings, electromagnetic spikes, gravitational surges. She picked one up and felt her breath hitch. 1 second. 1 second. 1 second. Every chart, every spike, every anomaly plateaued at that same digit. Ava, Eli said quietly. Look at this. She joined him at a different console, this one a diagnostic interface for emergency alerts. A map of the city was frozen mid-flash, red markers blooming at the edges like wounds. Some anomaly had been detected seconds before. Something catastrophic. It looks like, Ava swallowed, an explosion. Eli nodded. A big one. Maybe a meteor strike, she suggested, clinging to the most rational explanation left. But Eli shook his head. This energy isn't directional. It's radial. Like something detonated from inside the city. Ava closed her eyes. That doesn't make sense. If a bomb went off, time wouldn't stop, Eli finished. Unless. Ava waited for him to continue. He didn't. Instead, he handed her another document, a printed email draft, unsent but saved automatically. If the readings are correct, we're looking at a collapse event. The last observable second before impact may imprint itself. It ended mid-sentence. Ava pressed a hand to her forehead. Impact. Imprint. That can't mean. It means, Eli said quietly, that this isn't our world anymore. Ava's stomach dropped. What do you mean? Eli leaned back against the console, staring at the frozen map. This might not be a paused timeline, he said. It might be a fragment of one. Snapshot. A fossil of the second before everything ended. Ava shook her head violently. No. That's not possible. You and I, we're still moving. We're still alive. And nobody else is. His voice was gentle, but his eyes were bleak. No, Ava backed away from him. No, Eli. Don't do that. Don't talk like, you're not, this isn't some afterlife or. I didn't say it was, he said softly. But we have to consider what this world actually is. It's not behaving like time. It's behaving like a leftover. The word leftover felt cruel. Like this second was a piece of trash the universe forgot to throw away. Ava shook off the image. Even if this is an imprinted second, she said. You're here. You're real. That has to mean something. Eli didn't answer immediately. His silence was worse than any explanation he could have given. Eli. I've been noticing things, he finally said, voice low. Things wrong with me. With my body. Ava's throat tightened. What things? He raised his hand. You saw the cut I had on my arm yesterday, right? She nodded. He dragged a finger across the place where the wound had been. There was nothing. Not even a scar. Not even a memory. It healed, Ava whispered. No, Eli corrected gently. It vanished. Like it was never there. Ava's spine chilled. And this morning, he continued, I realized something else. I haven't felt tired. Not once. Not hungry. Not thirsty. Not cold. She staggered back half a step. Eli met her eyes with a softness that ached. Ava, what if I'm not supposed to be here? What if I'm not fully alive in the way you are? She covered her mouth with her hand. Stop. Don't say that. But Eli straightened, shoulders squaring, accepting something he didn't want to accept. If this is the last second before a catastrophic event, maybe my mind, my consciousness got caught in it. Maybe the explosion in my world killed me. No. Ava's voice cracked. No, Eli, that file wasn't from your world. It wasn't your body. Or here. Your. He stepped closer, gently placing a hand on her arm. Ava, look at me. She shook her head, breath trembling. I can't lose someone again. I can't. I'm not going to let you talk yourself into disappearing. His expression broke then, quiet and pained. I'm not trying to leave you, he whispered. I'm trying to tell you the truth. The truth. She laughed, but it was sharp with grief. The truth is that I don't care what this place is. I don't care if it's a second or a shadow or a universe between universes. Or here. And I. Her voice failed. The words lodged inside her like a shard. Eli swallowed. His thumb brushed her sleeve, the faintest, gentlest contact. Ava. She looked up at him, eyes burning. And that was when the building lights flickered. Not with electricity but with memory. A projection shimmered across the far wall. A video feed frozen mid-frame. Ava frowned. What is that? Eli turned toward the flashing screen. A surveillance camera. Its footage locked at the same impossible timestamp. 1 second. But as Ava approached, something shifted. The image moved. Just a flicker, like a glitch trapped in amber. Then again. The frozen timestamp dissolved for a heartbeat, revealing a half-second of footage that didn't belong in the paused world. A blur of motion. A figure sprinting across a street. A child standing in the path of an oncoming blast of light. A body shielding the child. Ava's breath shattered. No, she whispered. Eli, is that? They both stepped closer until their shadows covered the console. The glitch repeated. A soldier running. Child screaming. A burst of white. An impossible flare of light devouring the frame. Ava grabbed Eli's arm with both hands. That's you. That's you trying to save that kid. Eli stared at the screen as though it had reached through his chest and pulled something out. His breath stuttered. His body went still. That's... He swallowed. That's the last thing I remember. Ava covered her mouth. You died saving him, she whispered. Oh my God, Eli, you died saving him. The footage froze. The blast frozen forever at 1 second. Eli was silent for a long moment. Then he exhaled, a sound that broke like winter. So this really is the last second, he murmured. The moment before impact. Ava turned to him, tears burning her throat. her chest splitting open with something like grief and devotion all tangled into one impossible knot. "No," she said fiercely. "No, I don't accept that. You're here. You're with me. That has to mean something." Eli looked at her with eyes that held the weight of two worlds. "That's what I'm afraid of," he whispered. "That it means I'm the last piece of a moment that already ended." And as the footage dimmed, the building trembled, the world between worlds starting to come apart. The last second was breaking. And they were running out of borrowed time.